Well, throughout 2020, before I took this leap, every night I'd be reading about this, and my wife would be marking homework because she's a teacher, or marking her kids' tests or whatever. And she knew I was passionate about this. I don't think anyone understood how far I was willing to go to put a stop to this, because I had a vision for how to do this, and it's not complicated. We just need to talk about it because we have the truth on our side. This is so crazy. In no society can this possibly last, because when you come between parents and their children, and when you teach kids that they're born wrong and they need to be something they're not, there's not a hope that can be sustainable. It's always simply been a matter of how long it takes to put a stop to this child abuse. It's just a question of how many kids are harmed before we stop this. I've been more optimistic than pretty much everyone I've met, because I also have the advantage of talking to tens of thousands of people on the street. And I've known from day one that there's overwhelming support for my message, your message, all of us on the side of common sense, that children are never born in the wrong body. They're beautiful just as they are. That we shouldn't be keeping secrets from parents when a kid at school adopts a transgender identity, because it's the policy across pretty much every school board in Canada and many states in the US as well, to hide from parents that their own child has a new name and pronouns. These are psychological interventions that unqualified 22-year-old teachers are subjecting children to. The NHS in the UK conducted a systematic review of all of the evidence for all of this. And part of that was they said pronouns are not a benign intervention. This is harmful. This is psychologically abusive. You've got a struggling child who, universally, these kids have something else going on. There is autism. At the Tavistock, the biggest gender clinic in the world, in the UK, from their own statistics of 1,038 children, 35% had moderate to severe autism, never mind the mild cases. These are kids who've been sexually abused, probably in more than half the cases. I was speaking with Quentin Van Meter yesterday. He's a pediatrician. He deals with these kids. He told me it's probably about 60%. There's trauma, there's abuse, there's eating disorders, there's borderline personality disorder, there's kids in state care, are way overrepresented. In British Columbia, there's a psychologist who works for the Ministry of Children and Family Development. His name's Wallace Wong. He gave a talk at the Vancouver Library a few years ago where he said he's transitioning more than 1,000 kids, including more than 500 in the foster system. That's 8% of all children in state care are being socially or psychologically transitioned by this one doctor. He then sends them to the BC Children's Hospital, who will give them puberty blockers and all that.
I mean, these are kids that need help. They need help. They're crying out for help. It took me a while to just grasp the magnitude of the harm, because the way this big quotes gender-affirming care model works is you push that all to the side and you just affirm, affirm, affirm. In other words, you don't help them.
Right.
With all those things that they really need help for. I think it's difficult for people to fathom that something like this could be real, that this is really, a process that thousands of kids, never mind, young adults, have been put through.
It is difficult to fathom. That's one of the reasons it grew so fast, because people don't believe it when they first hear it. Without evidence, who's going to believe that doctors are cutting off the breasts of 12-year-old girls because these girls want to be boys? This is happening in the greatest nation on earth that's ever existed. Their own statistics show this. There's a young girl named Layla Jane. She's suing right now. She was 13 when they cut off her breast. She was in grade 8. She's got autism. She'd had trauma. She's just a young kid.
And this reminds me actually of your sign. Children cannot consent to puberty blockers, right?
That's right. So with the boys, for example, we've got the president of WPATH, which is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. They write what are called the standards of care that these gender clinics can follow. They're just guidelines. And Marcy Bowers, this man who says he's a woman, he admits in a Zoom call that none of the boys who started on puberty blockers at what is called Tanner stage 2, that's the beginning of puberty, they're probably 10, 11 years old, 12. None of the boys as adults have been able to have an orgasm.
Every single child who was, or adolescent who was truly blocked at Tanner stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero.
So tell me, what 10 or 11-year-old boy who can't even conceive of the concept can possibly consent to throwing away their adult sexual function? Of course they can't. What child struggling with mental health comorbidities, an abusive home life, whatever's going on, can consent to sterilizing themselves? These puberty blockers combined with the cross-sex hormones are sterilizing children. They're sterilizing thousands of autistic kids. And we're supposed to be the bigots who are speaking out against this? It's total madness. So we just have to stop caring what unintelligent, ill-informed people say about us. And do you want to look back at your life in 40 years and say you knew about all this child abuse and did nothing? I didn't. And that's how I viewed this. And I wasn't going to look back at my life and say I did nothing, because I knew I could do something. And when you know you can do something, and you talk to parents like I do, and you're sitting across the table at Tim Hortons from some big brawny dad, and he's bawling his eyes out because he's losing his girl to this, and he can't speak up, and the authorities are against him. Well, someone's got to represent these parents. And a lot of the doctors won't speak up either because they're worried about losing their license.
Well, let's talk about the street.
Sure.
Okay, because I mean, I don't know if you've counted how many interactions you've had now over this however many years, right, on the street, but you know, hundreds for sure, probably thousands.
Oh, tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
For sure.
And so, well, what's it like out there with your sign?
Depends where I go, but it's overwhelmingly supportive. Some people don't know at all. So they'll come up and they'll say, what are puberty blockers? And I might have a 30-second conversation because it doesn't take long to explain this. Kids who think they're trans are being given a drug that stops their bodies from going into puberty. And the average reaction right away is, what? They don't believe it. Today, though, because there has been so much work of awareness, most people have heard about them now. In the beginning, almost nobody. Now I get support nonstop. People give me high fives, fist bumps, honking their horns, coming up just to thank me because they've seen me in whatever video. And the far left who push this are losing greatly. They've got a lot of money on their side and a lot of organizations pushing this, and governments, and the UN, and the WHO. But we've got truth on our side, and the truth spreads for free, and it's unstoppable. And once people learn this truth, they never forget it, because they're doing this to kids, and their own kids are in danger.
Well, not everybody, and I've seen some of the videos, right? Not
Not
everybody is fist pumping.
That's right.
You know, so to speak.
That's right.
Don't forget to subscribe to our Alerts newsletter, and you'll never miss an episode.